What's some scary truth that humanity has to accept? Please like and subscribe to support this channel. At the moment, humanity's biggest threat of extinction is humanity itself. If a country decides it's time to send a couple of nukes, we'll most definitely end up with a nuclear war. With the USA and Russia, who currently hold the most amount of nuclear warheads in the world, giving it their all, and before we know it most civilizations will be bombed, and those lucky enough to not get hit will have to deal with insane levels of radiation. As a species, we kill over 2.7 trillion land and sea animals per year. The animal agriculture industry does more and worse damage to the environment than the entire transportation industry. Factory farms are incubators for antibiotic-resistant superbacteria. The 2009 flu pandemic that killed 300,000 people likely started on a pig farm. Lots of people are too stupid or heartless to stop supporting this genocide and are critical of those who do. Vegans, animal kill counter. Swine flu, and from a metaphysical standpoint, being born crammed into a shed then being beaten and having your throat slit over and over again is just as much a possibility as nothingness or a pleasant rebirth. It would seem rational that having that happen to you after you die would be less likely if you don't contribute to the cause of the torture by refusing to buy animal products. We have poisoned our home. For profit. That's the long and short of it. We will see the slow decay of humanity over time. The people in power won't stop focusing on keeping their money and power. They will keep you distracted with media and the inescapable rat race, all to keep you focused on anything except changing the status quo. We're slaves to a system that we cannot escape without working as a united species. But we're too divided by that system on purpose to ever unite. They have won by manufacturing hatred and fear of everything. Because greed will end us. Also, to add insult to injury, there's virtually no proof or reason to believe in an afterlife. It's a myth made up to imagine a better place than any shitty human society. We imagine a heaven, but we never realized this world could have been our heaven, had we not ruined it. Then we'll go extinct. And tinnitus, which is basically constant ringing and noises created by the brain, has no cure, and is very easy to get. Don't take your silence and peace for granted. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes. But seriously, I want all of you to help bring a worldwide awareness to this horrible condition. It's our veterans' #1 disability in the military. Millions of Americans suffer from it silently. COVID is giving it to people in record-breaking numbers. There is no cure. Don't believe anyone who tells you otherwise. It usually progresses as you age, and if you got it like me and it's constant, you really are living day to day. You're no longer living. I had this for a decade, and I got it when I was young from listening to loud music. And every day the victims get younger and younger. People kill themselves over this. It's that bad, and it has nothing to do with their mental state. Severe tinnitus will drive anyone insane. Don't take your silence for granted and be kind to one another. Please help get tinnitus the spotlight it needs, so that we can get more research and treatments for it. Because like I said, it's very easy to get. Let's cure it before it's too late. We will never have that kumbaya moment where everyone agrees on a path away from climate disaster and cooperates to achieve it. I realized this on a recent walk where I saw a ton of Takis wrappers on the ground, outside of a school. If humans haven't yet reached a consensus answer to the simple question of whether we should toss trash in a trash can, or over our shoulders, we're never gonna figure out shit like coal versus solar. Prions exist. They are proteins that folded wrong, but somehow influence proteins it comes in contact with to also fold wrong. Highly contagious, no cure, IIRC, and will pretty much just make your brain crumble. Ever seen that zombie-like deer that just runs in a small circle along a road? That. Personally, I find it even worse because it's not like it's a parasite or bacteria trying to survive, but a fucking misplaced Lego in a build that suddenly and irreversibly breaks all your toys. You're being held hostage by an international group of elites who take the vast majority of the value and productivity of the masses of humanity, who work every day to produce and distribute to society. These masses of humanity built everything. They built every ship, plane, skyscraper, every mile of road, every phone, the clothing on your back, the food you ate today. They are entitled to only some of its use, and even less of their productivity. The rest goes to the oligarchs, who now want to limit your consumption, while they consume more than ever. That we as a species don't matter at all. We don't have the power we think we have to make any change that would impact Earth. Yes, we might make it that it's impossible for us to live here. But after that point things will just keep going as usual. Life on Earth has survived countless extinction events of biblical proportions. We humans will not be here to see, but life will go on. Also, we for sure know the center of the universe. We are bacteria living in a grain of sand floating in virtually endless space. The entire human history would be but a dot in the longest book ever. That we will die out and never reach distant Earth-like planets given our limitations as a species. 1. Human lifespan. 2. The vast distances and resources required to travel such distances. 3. We can't exceed the speed of light. 4. Human beings are selfish, destructive, and can't be relied upon to stick to a long-distance space mission that may take 100 lifetimes or more to get there, or will ruin our planet before we will be scientifically be able to leave. 5. We can't even agree on science nor trust each other to not waste vast amounts of resources, military spending, on fighting, defending ourselves from each other. In just the past 50 years that the baby boomers have been in charge of the planet and its resources, humans eliminated 68% of animal species on the planet. Humans cleared 30% of all forest cover on the planet. The Arctic has lost over 70% of its summer sea ice. Over 17% of the Amazon rainforest has been clear-cut and destroyed. Over 50% of Australia's Great Barrier Reef has died on top of that. 2010 to 2019 was the hottest decade in recorded history. Animal and plant species are now going extinct at 1000x to 10,000x the natural rate. 90% of humans worldwide breathe polluted air. And air pollution now kills an estimated 7 million people worldwide every year. Earth's glaciers are losing 390 billion tons of ice and snow every year. Greenland lost 329 billion tons of ice in 2019 alone. The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico was 8,776 square miles, the size of Massachusetts. In 2017, 5 million people were displaced by climate change between 2009 and 2015. In 2019, Indonesia announced plans to move the capital city away from Jakarta, home to over 10 million people, because the city is literally sinking into the ocean due to rising sea levels. We consume all of the resources Earth creates over the course of a year in only 6 months now because of deforestation, monoculture farming, and overfishing in a single generation. We have been pushed out of the 10,000-year Holocene period of unprecedented climate stability. The Holocene was declared dead in 2016, and we are now in the Anthropocene age where the finely tuned natural systems that Earth benefits from will become highly unstable. But that's not even close to the worst part. The UN's International Panel on Climate Change released their 6th assessment report earlier this month, and it was the most sobering report card yet on climate change and the dire future of the planet. However, what is even more terrifying is what was in the leaked version of the report before it was heavily edited and officially released. Remember, every UN nation gets a veto on the language of IPCC reports. Even Russia and Saudi Arabia. That means every prior IPCC report has neutered the voices of the scientists, soft-pedaled the urgency, and subsequent events have always outpaced predictions of even their worst-case scenarios. The last line of the leaked report literally said, "If we act now, we could feel positive effects in the second half of the century and may avoid human extinction." For the UN, IPCC to even consider putting such language in their report is shocking and unprecedented. Why such a dire warning? The original Paris Agreement temperature goal was to keep global temperatures under 2 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial levels, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, in the press conference announcing the report, the IPCC admitted that we need every country to perfectly hit their Paris Agreement emission goals to prevent going over 2.5 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. No country is doing enough to hit the target set in the Paris Agreement. The authors of the 2021 IPCC report now believe that 1.5 degrees Celsius will be reached within the next 10 to 20 years in all scenarios. And, if we don't take extreme measures, we won't. A realistic estimate is closer to 5 to 10 years. Again, 1.5 degrees Celsius was the original Paris Agreement temperature goal. 2.5 degrees Celsius is now our best-case scenario. Red. Impossible. The effects of going over 1.5 degrees Celsius will be catastrophic, but even at 2 degrees Celsius, severe heat events will become 2.6x worse, plant and vertebrate species lost 2x worse, insect species lost 3x worse. decline in marine fisheries 2x worse rather than 70% to 90% of coral reefs dying, 99% will die. Many vulnerable and low-lying areas will become uninhabitable and refugee flows will radically increase. At 2.5 degrees Celsius, our new best-case scenario if everyone, everywhere, does everything perfectly, these effects become considerably worse, and climate change will be absolutely devastating for large swaths of the globe. We're talking about a scale of destruction and a body count that our limited, human minds cannot fathom right now. Human civilization will have to be fundamentally rebuilt. That's how our world will look by the end of the century in our best-case scenario. Reality is far, far worse than the media is reporting. It gets even worse though. Even if there was a meaningful reduction in emissions, we're about to reach a tipping point with the Amazon forest where we've clear-cut so much of it that it will no longer provide the CO2 mitigating effects the planet so desperately needs. Experts warn that soon the water cycle will become irreversibly broken, locking in a trend of declining rainfall and longer dry seasons that began decades ago. A positive feedback loop of destruction. At least half of the shrinking forest will give way to savanna. With as much as 17% of the forest lost already, scientists believe that the tipping point will be reached at 20% to 25% of deforestation, even if climate change is tamed. At the current rate of deforestation, 27% of the Amazon will be lost by 2030. In addition, as the Arctic ice sheets melt away completely in the summer, massive amounts of CO2 that was trapped deep within that ice will be released, along with the likelihood of releasing all kinds of unspeakably horrifying, prehistoric viruses we know nothing about and have no defense for, creating yet another positive feedback loop that kicks this shit into fourth gear, even if we do somehow find the will to curb our own emissions in a meaningful way. The oceans absorb 1/3 of humanity's CO2 emissions and 90% of the excess heat generated by increased greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the oceans hold about 60x more CO2 than the atmosphere. Caps of frozen CO2 or methane, called hydrates, contain these potent greenhouse gases, keeping them from escaping into the ocean and atmosphere. But, the ocean is warming as CO2 emissions continue to rise, and scientists say the temperature of the seawater surrounding some hydrate caps is within a few degrees of dissolving them. Our leaders have a plan to get this all under control, though. Right? Most policies to prevent climate collapse are planned somewhere in 2050, the more progressive ones in 2030. It turns out, according to an IPCC report due out next year that leaked a few weeks ago, we only have until 2025, less than 4 years. Current investment falls below what is needed, by a factor of 5, even to hold warming to the higher limit of 2°C, according to the report. Here's the thing that they're not explicitly stating: the true warming of the planet is already 1.9°C at the very least. The IPCC says we've had 1.1°C of mean change, but TS29 says that aerosol masking caused global cooling of up to 0.8°C, which is the smog we're putting out from burning fossil fuels. Ironically, our own pollution is keeping us cooler, for now, yeah. This is that earth-shattering, oh shit, moment you see in every disaster movie when the scientists realize that things are even worse than their worst-case scenarios predicted. We're not fucked. We're super-duper fucked. As soon as we switch to greener energy sources, we get that debt repaid, and fast, like a rubber band snapping back. We may already be seeing this. The sudden warming, record high temperatures, and massive wildfires we experienced this year could be due to a reduction of aerosols last year, largely due to the pandemic and related shutdowns. But, it's important to realize that the IPCC and others have kept moving the baseline forward. If we were still going by the 1750 baseline, we are already at 2°C, even without factoring in aerosol masking. It's only if you use 1850 or 1880 as a baseline that you can get some of these delusional numbers like 1.1°C. But, wait, it gets even worse. The climate models in the IPCC's own report from 2014 predict we're currently on track for a heating of somewhere between 3 degrees Celsius and 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. But, even these projections are all far too conservative, optimistic, and simply do not align with reality. The IPCC's own data shows that, in their conservative, worst-case scenario, the A1FI scenario, we are absolutely headed for a 1.5 degrees Celsius world within the next 5 to 10 years. We're nearly at 1.2 degrees Celsius already, according to their math. A 2.5 5 degrees Celsius world in 30 years, a 4 degrees Celsius to 6. 4 degrees Celsius world, red, guaranteed human extinction, in 80 years. The scientists know this. The IPCC knows this, which is why they admitted as much in the draft of the 2021 report. I'd be willing to bet a large percentage of policymakers know this. The bottom line, if we're going to actually face reality, we have to acknowledge that we're actually heading to 8 degrees Celsius and above, to whatever the equilibrium will become once we are dead and our emissions stabilize. The great algorithmic switch of 2016 ignited the beginning of an ideological divide that will probably contribute to some level of societal collapse. Firstly, what is the great algorithmic switch? Read here. Remember when we all got those TNA updates in 2016 from Google along with virtually every social media page? This was the year that news went from a generic feed of important things to a feed customized by algorithm to give you what you are most likely to like or engage with. Why is this bad, you ask? If you feel as though society has become more ideologically polarized in recent years, what you're likely remembering is everything since this event. This was the true beginning of the echo chamber effect where, combined with the communal power of the internet, we are being algorithmically organized into neat boxes that literally trap us in a bubble of confirmation bias. We're fed what we want to hear, and then we gravitate towards communities who are similarly ultra-removed from other narratives. Now, it's not just that if you grow up conservative you'll get conservative news, it's that you'll likely get conservative news that makes you angry about liberals, and vice versa because that creates more interaction than a standard news story. We're constantly now being fed reactionary content. Worse still, companies are incentivized to make us hate each other because this literally causes us to spend longer on their websites interacting with content that emotionally hijacks us. As such, we're losing the ability to manage our interactions, to step back far enough to see things beyond the dualities of left and right. As a result, the middle ground upon which we can reason and communicate effectively, where we can come to agreements and calmly debate both sides of an argument, where we can sit with the people we disagree with and get to know them, where we can learn and create understanding, where we can make compromises, is being eroded for profit. Without it, we lose the space that unifies our otherwise tribal mentalities and we regress back into warring states. And that is exactly what is happening before our eyes. We are being made irreconcilably hostile towards one another. This tends toward the direction of escalating rhetoric and violence. Everyone is silent on the power of the algorithm to convince us of things that might never have been there to begin with. We can begin to imagine that we always hated a certain group. And unless ethical frameworks somehow develop to directly address the issue of societal compartmentalization under surveillance capitalism, then we'll probably end up with total communication breakdown. This can easily encumber socio-economic complexity, stagnation through lack of cooperation. Look at any country with a cult-like following of left or right, where it's likely that everyone's getting equally screwed. It's a perfect case study that demonstrates a shift in our awareness. We think that the only option is to choose sides, as we're pushed towards extremes, forgetting that there is always a third option. Anyway, I'm just spitballing. Peace.